"Get away from my husband, you pathetic little housewife." Rachel Nava's hand instinctively moved to protect her rounded belly as the shrill voice echoed through the medical building's parking garage. At 7 months pregnant, she'd grown accustomed to moving carefully, but the venom in those words made her freeze completely. Dana Brown stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, her designer heels clicking menacingly against the concrete floor. Even in the dim garage lighting, her perfectly applied makeup and sleek blonde hair made her look like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Everything about her screamed expensive, from her tailored crimson dress to the designer handbag clutched in her manicured fingers. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. It truly helps support this story. Thank you. "Dana," Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible. She'd known about Wallace's affair for 2 months now, but seeing his mistress here, at her doctor's office, in this parking garage, felt like a violation of the last safe space she had left. "Don't you dare say my name like we're friends," Dana snarled, stalking closer. Her heels echoed with each deliberate step, "like you have any right to speak to me at all." Rachel's back hit the cold metal of her car. The ultrasound photos were still clutched in her trembling hand, images of her baby girl she'd been crying happy tears over just minutes ago. Now those tears felt frozen on her cheeks. "I just came from my appointment," Rachel managed, trying to keep her voice steady. "I don't want any trouble." Dana's laugh was sharp and cruel, bouncing off the concrete walls. "Your appointment? Yes, let's talk about that." She moved closer and Rachel could smell her perfume now, expensive, suffocating, the same scent that clung to Wallace's shirts. "Did my Wallace tell you where I was while you were getting your little ultrasound? Did he mention he was with me?" The words struck like physical blows. Rachel's vision blurred, but she forced herself to stay upright, to keep breathing for her baby. "He wouldn't," Rachel started. "Wouldn't what? Choose me over you?" Dana's voice dripped with contempt. "Oh, sweetheart, he already has. Why else would I know exactly when your appointments are, where you park, what time you leave?" Rachel's blood turned to ice. This wasn't a chance encounter. This was calculated, planned. "Wallace gave you my schedule," Rachel whispered, the horrifying realization settling over her like a shroud. Finally catching on, Dana tilted her head, studying Rachel like she was something pitiful and small. "Did you really think he wanted that baby? That he wanted to be trapped with you for another 18 years? She laughed again, colder this time. "You're just an obstacle now, and obstacles." Her hand swung up without warning. The heavy designer bag connected with Rachel's shoulder. Rachel gasped, stumbling sideways. Before she could recover, before she could even scream, Dana struck again, this time lower, the bag slamming directly into Rachel's swollen stomach. Pain exploded through Rachel's body. White-hot, terrifying pain. She fell, her knees cracking against the concrete. Her hands flew to her belly, covering, protecting, silently begging her baby to be okay. "That's where you belong," Dana hissed, standing over her like a predator over prey. "On the ground. Maybe now you'll finally understand he's done with you." Through her tears and terror, Rachel looked up and saw something that made her blood freeze. Dana wasn't enraged. She wasn't out of control. She was calm, satisfied. This had been her plan all along. Rachel's world had narrowed to 3 things: the pain radiating from her stomach, the cold concrete beneath her palms, and the sound of Dana Brown's heels clicking away into the shadows. "Please," Rachel whispered to her belly, to the baby girl who'd been kicking just hours ago during the ultrasound. "Please be okay. Please move, please." Nothing. The silence inside her womb was deafening. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers slick with blood from where her palms had scraped against the garage floor. The screen was cracked. She must have dropped it when Dana struck her, but it still glowed when she pressed the home button. Wallace, she had to call Wallace. He would come. He would help. He had to. Her hands shook so violently she could barely navigate to his contact. 3 rings. 4. Finally, his voice clipped and impatient. Rachel, I'm in the middle of a meeting. Wallace, her voice cracked, barely recognizable even to herself. Dana just attacked me. She was waiting for me. She hit me twice. I'm bleeding. Wallace, the baby, I can't feel the baby moving. Silence stretched across the line. Not the silence of shock or concern, but something calculated. Cold. Rachel, Wallace said finally, his tone carefully modulated. I'm sure you're upset, but Dana wouldn't do something like that. Are you certain you're not overreacting? The words hit harder than Dana's bag had. Overreacting, Rachel's voice rose, echoing off the concrete walls. I'm on the ground in a parking garage. She knew my appointment time. She was waiting for me behind a pillar. She aimed for my stomach, Wallace. She aimed for our daughter. Dana has been with me all afternoon, Wallace said smoothly, and Rachel heard something in the background, a woman's muffled laugh. I think the stress of the pregnancy might be affecting you. Hormones can cause. Rachel ended the call. Her thumb hovered over the screen, trembling. She just severed her lifeline to the man she'd married, the man whose child was growing inside her, the man who was supposed to protect them both. And he'd chosen his mistress over his wife, lying injured on concrete. The phone slipped from her fingers. Rachel stared at the scattered ultrasound photos around her knees, her daughter's perfect profile, her tiny hands reaching toward nothing, her spine curved like a promise. Just 30 minutes ago, the technician had smiled and said everything looked perfect. Rachel had cried happy tears and imagined holding her baby girl for the first time. Now she was crying different tears, the kind that came from a place so deep she didn't know it existed until this moment. A sob tore from her throat, raw and animal. Then another. Her body shook with the force of her grief for her marriage, for her baby's safety, for the naive woman she'd been when she woke up this morning. That woman had believed her husband loved her. That woman had believed successful marriages required sacrifice. That woman had told herself that affairs were just mistakes, that they didn't mean anything, that love could survive betrayal if you just tried hard enough. That woman was dying here on this concrete floor. Rachel's vision swam. Black spots danced at the edges. The pain in her stomach had evolved from sharp to nauseating. A deep ache that made her want to curl into a ball, but she couldn't. Some primal instinct told her to stay still, to protect what remained. There was only one person left. One person who'd never let her down, never lied to her, never chosen someone else over her safety. With shaking fingers, Rachel retrieved her phone. She had to try 3 times before she could tap his contact. One ring. Michael always answered on the first ring. Rachel. His voice cut through her panic like a blade through water, clean, sharp, instantly alert. Even just hearing him say her name made something in her chest unclench slightly. Michael, she was sobbing now, couldn't stop, couldn't breathe properly. I need you, something happened, I'm hurt. The baby Michael, I'm scared. The sound that came through the phone was barely audible, but Rachel knew what it was. Her brother shifting into combat mode. She'd heard it once before, years ago, when their father had raised his hand to their mother. Michael had been 17 then, rail-thin but already lethal. Their father never raised his hand again. Where are you? Michael's voice had dropped into something lower, harder, military precision cutting through civilian panic. St. Catherine's Hospital parking garage. Level 3. I can't get up, Michael. Everything hurts and the baby isn't moving and... I'm 8 minutes away. Stay on the phone with me. Don't try to move. Are you bleeding? Rachel looked down at her hands, her torn stockings, the way her dress had ridden up when she fell. I don't know, maybe. My stomach, she hit me right where the baby. Who hit you? The temperature in Michael's voice dropped 20 degrees. Rachel, who did this? Dana Brown. Wallace's, she could barely say the word. His mistress. She was waiting for me. She knew when my appointment would end. She knew where I park. Michael, Wallace told her. He gave her my schedule. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of calculations, strategies forming, decisions being made at a speed Rachel couldn't comprehend. 7 minutes now, Michael said, and there was something in his voice Rachel had only heard a handful of times in her life. Something that made insurgents retreat and enemies reconsider. Rachel, listen to me carefully. I'm going to take care of this, all of it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Through her tears and terror, Rachel understood. Her brother wasn't just promising to help her to the hospital. He was declaring war. I understand, she whispered. Good, now I need you to take slow breaths. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Your baby needs oxygen. Can you do that for me? Rachel tried. Her breath hitched and stuttered, but she tried. That's good, keep breathing. Keep talking to me. Tell me about your appointment. What did the doctor say before this happened? She said, Rachel's voice broke. She said the baby looked perfect, strong heartbeat, good size. She's measuring right on track. She was moving so much during the ultrasound, Michael. She was active and healthy and perfect. She still is, Michael said firmly. She's protected in there. The womb is designed to withstand impact, but we're not taking chances. I'm 6 minutes out now. Rachel could hear the engine roar in the background, the sharp turn of tires. Her brother was breaking every speed limit between wherever he'd been and where she was now. Michael, Rachel whispered, Wallace didn't believe me. I told him I was attacked and he defended her. He said she was with him all afternoon. He said I was overreacting. Another silence. Then, Wallace Jordan has no idea who I am. He's about to find out. Before Rachel could ask what he meant, she heard it. The distinct rumble of a powerful engine entering the garage. Not the soft purr of a luxury sedan, but something deeper. Military grade. I'm here, Michael said. Stay on the line. Tires squealed. A door slammed. Footsteps fast, purposeful, the sound of someone who knew exactly where they were going. Rachel. Michael's voice echoed through the garage, and Rachel tried to call out but managed only a sob. Then he was there, dropping to his knees beside her, his hands immediately moving over her with professional efficiency, checking her pulse, her pupils, the way she was protecting her stomach. He was wearing all black, she noticed distantly. Black tactical pants, black shirt, a jacket that looked too structured to be civilian. There was a badge clipped to his belt she'd never seen before. Where did she hit you? His voice was steady, controlled, but his eyes were pure fury, barely contained. Shoulder first, Rachel managed. Then my stomach, aimed right at her, Michael. She aimed at the baby. Michael's jaw went tight. He pulled out his phone, already dialing. This is Nava. I need an ambulance at St. Catherine's, parking level 3. 29-year-old female, 28 weeks pregnant, assault victim, blunt force trauma to the abdomen. Patient is conscious, in shock, possible internal injuries. He listened for a moment, his eyes never leaving Rachel's face. 4 minutes, make it 2. He ended the call and refocused entirely on Rachel, his hands gentle despite the violence coiled in every line of his body. Listen to me. You're in shock, which means everything feels worse than it might actually be. Your baby might be perfectly fine, but we're not taking chances. We're getting you checked immediately. She was waiting for me, Rachel whispered, like she knew exactly when I'd be here. Something flickered across Michael's face. Recognition, calculation, a puzzle piece clicking into place. Tell me everything, he said quietly. Every detail, every word, start from when you left your appointment. So Rachel did, her voice shaking but growing steadier as she spoke. Michael listened without interrupting, but she could see his mind working, cataloging every piece of information like intelligence gathered in the field. When she got to the part about calling Wallace, about his cold dismissal, Michael's hands curled into fists. He chose her, Rachel said, and saying it out loud made it feel real in a way it hadn't before. He didn't even hesitate. He made a choice, Michael agreed, his voice dangerously quiet. The wrong one. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Michael stood, positioning himself where the paramedics would see him immediately, but his eyes stayed on Rachel, assessing, protecting. "Michael," Rachel whispered, "what aren't you telling me?" Her brother looked down at her, and for just a moment she saw something she didn't recognize, something professional, lethal. "We'll talk at the hospital," he said. "Right now, you and your daughter are the only things that matter." The ambulance screamed into the garage. Paramedics swarmed around Rachel, asking questions she could barely answer. Through it all, Michael stayed close, his presence solid and unwavering. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, Rachel's vision started to fade at the edges. The adrenaline was wearing off, and her body was shutting down. "Michael," she managed. "I'm here, I'm not going anywhere." The last thing Rachel saw before darkness claimed her was her brother pulling out his phone, his expression cold and focused as he typed something. And the last thing she heard, barely audible over the sirens, was Michael's voice. "Got you." The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Rachel lay in the bed, monitors beeping steadily around her, an IV drip feeding fluids into her arm. The doctors had finished their examination 20 minutes ago. The baby was alive, heart rate strong, no signs of placental abruption. A miracle, they'd called it. Rachel called it borrowed time. Because the threat hadn't disappeared, Dana Brown was still out there, Wallace was still choosing her, and Rachel was still trapped in a marriage that had become a prison. Michael stood by the window, his posture rigid, arms crossed over his chest. He'd been silent since the doctors left, his eyes fixed on something outside that Rachel couldn't see. Or maybe he wasn't looking at anything external at all. Maybe he was looking at the problem from every angle, the way he'd been trained to do in places Rachel had never wanted to imagine him. "Michael," she said softly. He turned immediately, his expression softening as he approached the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a handbag wielded by a psychopath." Rachel tried to smile, but it felt wrong on her face. "The baby's okay, that's all that matters." "That's not all that matters." Michael pulled a chair close to the bed, sitting down so they were at eye level. "Rachel, I need you to tell me everything again, every detail you remember, every word Dana said, every movement she made." "I already told you." "I know, but now you're calmer. Now you might remember things you didn't before." His voice was gentle but firm. "Details matter, they always matter." Rachel closed her eyes, forcing herself back into that parking garage. The cold concrete, the echo of heels, Dana's perfectly made-up face twisted with contempt. "She said, 'Get away from my husband,'" Rachel began, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to break through. "She stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. She wasn't surprised to see me, she was waiting. She knew exactly where I'd be." Michael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Which pillar?" "The one closest to the elevator, third from the entrance." Rachel opened her eyes. "Why does that matter?" "Because that pillar has a camera mounted on the opposite wall." Michael pulled out his phone, his fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. Perfect angle, high definition, records everything. Rachel's breath caught. "You can see what happened." "I can see everything that happens in that garage." Michael's eyes never left his phone. Every garage, every hallway, every entrance and exit of every building Wallace Jordan owns. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Rachel was only beginning to understand. "Michael, what exactly do you do?" He looked up then, meeting her eyes directly. "I run security for Jordan Enterprises, the entire operation, surveillance, personnel vetting, threat assessment, crisis management. Wallace Jordan hired me 3 years ago through a private contractor firm. He knows me as Michael Nash." Rachel's mind struggled to process what she was hearing. "Nash, you used a fake name." "I used Mom's maiden name," Michael corrected. It's legal, it's on all my documentation, and it kept anyone from making the connection between me and Rachel Nava Jordan. He paused. I needed to make sure I could protect you without anyone knowing we were related. Why would you? Rachel stopped, understanding dawning. You didn't trust Wallace. Even 3 years ago you didn't trust him. I didn't know him, Michael said carefully. You married him 6 months before I took the job. He seemed decent enough, but you don't survive 2 tours in Afghanistan by assuming people are who they say they are. His expression hardened. Turns out my instincts were right. Rachel felt something twist in her chest, gratitude mixed with grief. Her brother had been watching over her for 3 years, and she'd never known. While she'd been playing the perfect corporate wife, Michael had been positioning himself to catch her if she fell. Does Wallace know you're here? She asked. Wallace knows that a woman was brought into St. Catherine's emergency room after an incident in his parking garage. He doesn't know it's you. The hospital registered you under a Jane Doe at my request until we sort this out. Michael's expression was clinical, detached. He also doesn't know that his head of security is currently reviewing footage of his mistress committing assault. Can I see it? Rachel wasn't sure she wanted to, but she needed to. Needed proof that what happened was real, that she hadn't imagined it or exaggerated it or misunderstood it the way Wallace had suggested. Michael hesitated, then turned his phone toward her. The footage was crystal clear, time-stamped 2:47 p.m. Rachel watched herself exit the elevator, ultrasound photos in hand, smiling despite everything because her baby was healthy. She watched herself walk toward her car, one hand protectively on her belly. Then Dana appeared. Even on the small screen, even in silence, Rachel could see the calculation in every movement. Dana hadn't stumbled upon her by accident. She'd been positioned, waiting, watching. When Rachel reached her car, Dana moved with purpose. The confrontation played out silently. Rachel could read her own body language, the fear and confusion, the instinctive step backward. Then Dana's arm swung up, the designer bag connecting with Rachel's shoulder. Rachel stumbled. Before she could recover, Dana struck again, lower, the bag slamming directly into Rachel's pregnant stomach with enough force to make Rachel's knees buckle. Rachel fell. Dana stood over her, saying something Rachel couldn't hear but could read in the cruel curve of her mouth. Then Dana walked away, her heels clicking steadily, unhurried. No panic, no remorse, just calm satisfaction. The footage continued, showing Rachel on the ground, shaking, reaching for her phone. It showed her making 2 calls, first to Wallace, then to Michael. It showed her crying, alone, terrified. Michael turned off the screen. That's attempted assault on a pregnant woman, he said quietly. Potentially attempted harm to an unborn child. And given the premeditation, the fact that she was lying in wait, that she knew your schedule, this wasn't a crime of passion. This was planned. Wallace gave her my schedule, Rachel whispered. He had to have. I never told anyone except him when my appointments were. Michael's expression went cold. I know, I've already accessed his calendar, his emails, his text messages. He paused. Rachel, there's something else you need to know. The way he said it made Rachel's stomach drop. What? Dana Brown isn't just Wallace's mistress. She's pregnant too. The room tilted. Rachel gripped the bed rail, her knuckles going white. What? 3 months along. Wallace has been paying for her medical care through a shell company. Same company he's been using to pay for her apartment, her car, her credit cards. Michael's voice was matter of fact, delivering terrible news with military efficiency. He's been planning this, Rachel. The affair isn't casual. He's building a life with her. Rachel couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The man she'd married, the man whose child was growing inside her, was building a future with another woman, another pregnant woman. Why didn't he just divorce me? She asked, her voice breaking. Because divorce is expensive, especially when there's a child involved. Child support, alimony, asset division, it would cost him millions. Michael's jaw tightened. But if something happened to you or the baby during pregnancy, if there was a medical complication, a tragic accident. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Rachel felt ice flood her veins. You think he wanted Dana to hurt me? You think he wanted something to happen to the baby? I think Wallace Jordan is a man who solves problems efficiently, Michael said carefully, and I think he sees you and your daughter as problems. He leaned forward. But here's what Wallace doesn't know. He doesn't know that the contractor he hired to protect his empire is actually protecting you. He doesn't know that every camera, every access point, every piece of security infrastructure in his world reports to me first. Michael pulled up something else on his phone, a complex network of screens, each showing different angles of different locations. Rachel recognized Wallace's office building, his private club, the penthouse where she'd lived until recently. He doesn't know I've been documenting everything for 3 years, Michael continued. Every late-night visitor to his office, every unexplained expense, every meeting with Dana that he logged as client entertainment. His expression was hard as stone. And he definitely doesn't know that his head of security is an ex-Marine who specialized in intelligence gathering, and that his wife is that Marine's sister. Rachel stared at her brother, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not just as her protective older brother, but as someone who'd spent years in combat zones, learning how to outthink enemies, how to gather intelligence, how to plan operations that left no room for failure. "What are we going to do?" she asked. "We're going to build a case," Michael said simply. "Every piece of evidence, every financial record, every message between Wallace and Dana, every frame of footage from today's attack. We're going to document everything until there's nowhere for either of them to hide." Wallace has lawyers, he has money, he has power. "He has vulnerabilities," Michael interrupted. "Everyone does. I've spent 3 years learning where he cuts corners, where he bends rules, where he thinks no one is watching." He met her eyes. "He's been sloppy, Rachel, arrogant. He thought he was too powerful to get caught." "And Dana?" "Dana Brown is about to learn that assaulting a pregnant woman in a parking garage monitored by security cameras was the biggest mistake of her life." Michael's smile was cold. She thought she was eliminating competition. What she actually did was provide me with evidence of attempted assault, conspiracy, and depending on what else I find, potentially attempted murder. Rachel's head spun. Less than 4 hours ago, she'd been a pregnant woman going to a routine doctor's appointment. Now, she was at the center of something that felt like a military operation. "Michael, I'm scared." Her brother's expression softened immediately. He reached out, taking her hand gently. "I know, but Rachel, listen to me. No one touches you again. No one threatens your daughter. No one." His grip tightened slightly. "I've fought in places where the rules didn't apply, where power meant everything and mercy meant nothing. Wallace thinks he's operating in that world, but he's wrong." "Why?" "Because he's fighting someone who actually knows how that world works." Michael's eyes were steady, certain. "And in that world, the most dangerous person isn't the one with the most money or the most power. It's the one with the most reason to win." Outside the hospital room, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Michael's posture shifted instantly, alert, protective. But the footsteps passed by. "Get some rest," Michael said, standing. "I'm going to make some calls, access some systems, start building the evidence file." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Rachel, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "I've always trusted you." "Good, because what comes next is going to get complicated. Wallace is going to realize something's wrong. He's going to start asking questions. And when he does, I need you to let me handle it." "What are you going to do?" Michael's smile was sharp as a blade. "I'm going to give Wallace exactly what he hired me for: security. I'm going to tell him there was an incident in his parking garage, that a woman was attacked, that I'm investigating." He paused at the door. "What I won't tell him is that the woman was his wife, or that his head of security is planning his complete destruction. He opened the door, then looked back one more time. Wallace Jordan doesn't know who he hired, Michael said quietly. He's about to find out. Then he was gone, leaving Rachel alone with the monitors and the IV drip and the tiny heartbeat that pulsed steadily from the fetal monitor. Her daughter still alive, still fighting. Just like her mother. Dana Brown sat across from Wallace Jordan in a private corner booth of the Meridian, an upscale restaurant where discretion was as expensive as the wine list. She'd chosen a table positioned perfectly, visible enough to seem legitimate, secluded enough for the conversation they needed to have. She looked radiant. Her blonde hair cascaded in perfect waves over one shoulder, her makeup flawless, her crimson dress, the same one she'd worn yesterday in the parking garage, hugging curves that were just beginning to show the subtle signs of early pregnancy. Wallace looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. "You're late," Dana said, her voice carrying just enough edge to remind him she wasn't pleased. "I had complications." Wallace's tie was slightly crooked, his usually immaculate appearance showing cracks. "The board called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning, something about financial irregularities." Dana's perfectly manicured fingers tightened around her wine glass, sparkling water actually, though the glass was wine-shaped for appearances. Financial irregularities, what does that mean? "It means someone's been looking through records they shouldn't have access to." Wallace's jaw clenched. "Someone in my security team, probably. Some overzealous contractor thinking they're protecting company interests." "Can they fire you?" Dana's voice sharpened with alarm. "Fire me? I built that company from—" Wallace stopped himself, lowering his voice. "No, they can't fire me, but they can ask uncomfortable questions, make demands, threaten audits." He rubbed his temples. "This is exactly what we didn't need right now." "We?" Dana leaned forward, her expression hardening. "Don't you mean this is what you didn't need?" "I did my part, Wallace. I handled your problem yesterday." Wallace's eyes darted around the restaurant. "Keep your voice down." "Why? Afraid someone will hear that your mistress assaulted your pregnant wife?" Dana's smile was sharp as glass. "Because that happened. I made sure of it. I did exactly what you wanted, and now you're getting cold feet." "I never wanted," Wallace started, then stopped. His expression shifted into something calculating. "I never explicitly asked you to do anything, Dana. You acted on your own emotions, your jealousy, your inability to control yourself around Rachel." The words hit like a slap. Dana's eyes widened, then narrowed dangerously. "Excuse me. If anyone asks, if police get involved, if lawyers start digging, the story is simple." Wallace's voice was calm, clinical. "You're an unstable woman who became obsessed with me. You attacked my wife in a fit of jealousy. I had no knowledge of your intentions, and I certainly didn't facilitate them." Dana stared at him, watching her future disintegrate in real time. "You're going to throw me under the bus." "I'm going to protect myself," Wallace corrected, "which is what any intelligent person would do in this situation." He signaled for the check. "We need to cool things off for a while, stop seeing each other, let this blow over." "Stop seeing each other." Dana's laugh was brittle, dangerous. "Wallace, I'm pregnant with your child. Or did you forget that small detail?" Wallace went very still. "You told me you were on birth control." "I was." Dana's smile was venomous now. "It's not 100% effective. Surely a man of your intelligence knows that." She leaned back, one hand moving to her still flat stomach in a gesture that was equal parts protective and threatening. 3 months along, due in July. A little boy, the ultrasound says. Your son, Wallace. The color drained from Wallace's face. "That's not possible. We were careful." "Apparently not careful enough." Dana's voice dripped with satisfaction. "So no, we're not cooling things off. We're getting married. You're going to divorce Rachel quickly, quietly, generously enough that she doesn't fight it, and then you and I are going to build the life you promised me." Dana, be reasonable. Reasonable? Her voice rose and several nearby diners glanced over. Dana didn't care anymore. I assaulted your wife for you. I risked criminal charges, my reputation, everything, because you said she was the obstacle. You said if something happened to her or the baby, we could be together. You said. Lower your voice, Wallace hissed. Why? Afraid someone will hear the truth. Dana's eyes glittered with fury and something else. Fear, maybe, or desperation. You used me. You gave me her schedule, told me about the camera delays, made it sound like you needed me to handle your Rachel problem. And now you're trying to pretend you had nothing to do with it. Wallace's expression went cold. I think you're confused about what happened. Stress, pregnancy hormones, they can make people remember things that didn't occur. He stood, straightening his jacket. Get yourself together, Dana. Stop making these accusations. And stay away from Rachel, or I'll be forced to file a restraining order on her behalf. He dropped cash on the table and walked away, leaving Dana sitting alone in the expensive restaurant, her perfect facade finally cracking. 2 days later, Rachel walked into the same restaurant. She wasn't supposed to be out of the hospital yet, but she'd checked herself out against medical advice. Michael had argued, but Rachel had been firm. She needed to do this, needed to look Dana Brown in the eye and understand the woman who tried to destroy her. Michael had made the arrangements, a text from an unknown number to Dana, claiming to be from Wallace, requesting a meeting at the Meridian. Dana had responded immediately, eagerly. She'd arrived 15 minutes early, already seated in the same corner booth, already sipping sparkling water from a wine glass. She looked up when Rachel approached, and the color drained from her face. "Hello, Dana," Rachel said quietly. Dana's shock lasted only a second before her expression hardened into something ugly. "What are you doing here?" Wallace said. "Wallace didn't send the message. I did." Rachel slid into the booth across from her, moving carefully, one hand protectively on her belly. "We need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you." Dana started to stand, but Rachel's next word stopped her. "There's security footage of everything, the parking garage, you waiting, you hitting me, all of it." Dana froze halfway out of her seat, then slowly sat back down. "So, it was self-defense. You attacked me first." "The footage shows you waiting for 30 minutes, Rachel interrupted calmly. "It shows you checking your watch, positioning yourself behind the pillar, choosing your moment. That's not self-defense, Dana, that's premeditation." Dana's hands trembled slightly. She hid them in her lap. "What do you want? Money? I'll have Wallace." "Wallace threw you under the bus 2 days ago." Rachel kept her voice gentle, almost compassionate. "He told you the attack was all your idea, your jealousy, your instability. He's preparing to sacrifice you to save himself." "That's not true," Dana said, but her voice wavered. "Isn't it?" Rachel tilted her head. "Why else would I be sitting here instead of him? Why else would he be avoiding your calls? I checked, 17 missed calls in the last 48 hours. He's not calling back, Dana. He's never going to call back." Dana's perfect makeup couldn't hide the fear creeping into her eyes. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know you're pregnant," Rachel said softly. "I know you thought attacking me would clear the path for you and Wallace to be together. I know you believed you were fighting for your future." She paused. "I know because I would have believed the same thing 6 months ago." Dana stared at her, confusion mixing with anger. "What are you talking about?" "I believed Wallace loved me," Rachel said. "I believed our marriage meant something. I believed he wanted our baby." Her hand moved over her belly. "I believed a lot of things that weren't true. You're believing them now." "Wallace loves me," Dana insisted, but her voice cracked. "He promised we'd be together, he promised." "He promised me forever too." Rachel's smile was sad. "Do you know what I realized in that hospital bed? Wallace doesn't love either of us. He loves control. He loves power. And when we stop serving his purposes, when we become inconvenient or expensive or problematic," she leaned forward, "we become obstacles to be removed." Dana's hands were shaking visibly now. Stop. You didn't attack me because you loved him, Dana. You attacked me because you feared I still mattered. You feared that even pregnant with his child, you were still replaceable. Rachel's voice was gentle but relentless. And you were right to be afraid, because to Wallace, everyone is replaceable. Shut up, Dana whispered. He gave you my schedule. He told you about camera angles. He made you feel like you were partners in solving his problem. Rachel held Dana's gaze. But you weren't his partner. You were his weapon. And now that the weapon's been used, he's disposing of it. Tears streaked through Dana's perfect makeup. He said we'd get married. He said after the divorce. There won't be a divorce, Rachel said quietly. There will be criminal charges against you, against him, the assault, the embezzlement, the conspiracy. She paused. My brother found everything, Dana, every message between you and Wallace, every financial record, every piece of evidence showing this wasn't a jealous attack, this was planned attempted harm. Dana's face crumpled. I thought he said. He lied, Rachel said simply, to both of us, for years, and now we both get to decide what we do with that truth. Dana looked up, mascara running down her cheeks, her perfect facade completely shattered. What are you going to do? I'm going to protect my daughter, Rachel said. I'm going to divorce Wallace and make sure he never hurts another woman the way he hurt us. I'm going to rebuild my life into something real instead of the performance I've been living. She stood carefully. What you do is up to you. The police will do what they do. I can't stop that. The footage exists. Your messages with Wallace exist. You made choices, Dana, violent choices. You'll face consequences for those. Rachel's expression softened slightly. But for what it's worth, I understand why you made them. I understand what it's like to believe Wallace's lies, to think you were fighting for love when really you were just fighting for scraps of attention from a man who never valued you at all. Dana stared at her, and something shifted in her expression. Recognition, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. How are you so calm? Dana whispered. I attacked you. I tried to hurt your baby. How are you not screaming at me? Because screaming wouldn't change anything, Rachel said quietly. And because I've spent 2 days watching everything I believed about my life fall apart, I don't have energy left for rage. She paused at the edge of the booth. I have energy for protecting my daughter, for rebuilding, for surviving. That's all that matters now. She turned to leave, then stopped. Your son deserves better than Wallace Jordan for a father. I hope you figure that out before it's too late. Rachel walked away, leaving Dana alone in the booth. Her perfect dress and perfect hair and perfect makeup all revealed as the costume they'd always been. Michael was waiting outside, leaning against his car, arms crossed. How did it go? She's broken, Rachel said quietly. She thought she was winning. She thought attacking me would get her everything she wanted. Instead, she lost everything, her future, her freedom, her illusions about who Wallace really is. Good, Michael said, but there was no satisfaction in his voice, just grim acceptance of necessary outcomes. Rachel looked back at the restaurant, seeing Dana through the window, still sitting in the booth, head in her hands, shoulders shaking. She's not the enemy, Rachel said. She's just another victim who Wallace turned into a weapon. She still attacked you, Michael reminded her gently. I know. Rachel's hand moved to her belly, feeling her daughter kick, alive, strong, fighting. And she'll pay for that. But Wallace made her believe it was the right thing to do. He made us both believe his lies. She looked at her brother. He's the real enemy, not her. Michael nodded slowly. Then let's make sure he pays for what he did to both of you. Rachel climbed into the car, feeling something settle in her chest. Not forgiveness, she wasn't ready for that, but understanding, clarity. Dana Brown had attacked her in a parking garage. But Dana Brown had also been manipulated, used, and discarded by the same man who'd betrayed Rachel's trust. They were both casualties of Wallace Jordan's cruelty. But only one of them was going to rise from the ashes. And it wasn't going to be the woman who'd let herself become his weapon. It was going to be the woman who'd learned to fight back. Michael Nava sat in his office at 2:47 a.m., surrounded by 6 monitors displaying different layers of Wallace Jordan's carefully constructed empire. To anyone walking past, it would look like a typical security operations center, cameras cycling through building feeds, access logs scrolling by, routine surveillance maintaining the illusion of safety. But Michael wasn't watching for external threats tonight. He was documenting internal rot. The first monitor showed financial records, 2 years of transactions flowing from Jordan Enterprises into shell companies with innocuous names: Meridian Consulting, Apex Solutions, Summit Strategic Partners, each one a hollow vessel designed for one purpose: funneling Wallace's embezzled funds into accounts that paid for Dana Brown's lifestyle. Michael's fingers moved across the keyboard, tracing each transaction back to its source. Wallace had been clever, spreading the theft across multiple departments, disguising it as vendor payments and consulting fees. Small amounts at first, 5,000 here, 10,000 there, then growing bolder, 50,000, 100,000. By the time Michael had finished mapping the network, the total exceeded $4.7 million. Arrogant, Michael muttered, downloading the files to an encrypted drive. You thought no one would notice because you owned the company. But Wallace didn't own the security system. Michael did. The second monitor showed email records. Michael had installed a backup protocol when he'd taken over Jordan Enterprises security 3 years ago. Every email sent or received by executive accounts was automatically copied to a secure server. Insurance, he'd called it. Protection against corporate espionage or legal liability. Now it was a weapon. He pulled up Wallace's correspondence with Dana Brown. The messages started professionally enough, a CEO communicating with a consultant he'd hired for marketing analysis. But within 3 months the tone shifted. Personal observations, compliments, suggestions to meet outside the office. Then came the affair. Michael scrolled past the romantic messages. Those were Wallace's private shame, not evidence of crime. But then he found what he needed. Messages from 6 months ago when Rachel's pregnancy had begun showing. Wallace, the situation at home is becoming complicated. Dana, complicated how? Wallace R. is pregnant, due in January. This changes our timeline. Dana, changes it how? You said you were going to leave her. Wallace, I will. But a divorce while she's pregnant would be expensive. Child support calculations, alimony, asset division. The courts favor pregnant wives. I need to wait until after the birth. Dana, how long do I have to wait? Wallace, I'm exploring options. There might be ways to simplify things. Michael's jaw tightened. He copied the entire conversation thread, then kept searching. 3 weeks ago, the messages became more specific. Wallace, R has an appointment on Thursday at 2:30. St. Catherine's Medical Building, level 3 parking. Dana, why are you telling me this? Wallace, just information, in case you wanted to clarify things with her. Dana, clarify. Wallace, make her understand that her time is over, that she needs to step aside gracefully. Dana, and if she doesn't? Wallace, then she'll need to learn the hard way. The parking garage cameras have a 15-second refresh delay on level 3. Blind spots near the 3rd pillar from the elevator. Just information, Dana. What you do with it is your choice. There it is, Michael whispered. Premeditation. Conspiracy. Wallace hadn't explicitly ordered the attack, but he'd provided intelligence, opportunity, and motive. Any prosecutor would see it for what it was, a manipulation designed to give Wallace plausible deniability while achieving his goal. He downloaded the messages and moved to the 3rd monitor. This one showed surveillance footage, not just from the parking garage, but from Wallace's office, his private club, every location where he'd met Dana over the past 6 months. Michael had been collecting it systematically, building a timeline of the affair that would be impossible to deny. The footage from Wallace's office was particularly damning. Late-night meetings that went on for hours. Dana leaving Wallace's private bathroom adjusting her dress. Champagne celebrations when Dana showed Wallace her positive pregnancy test. Wallace's face, not shocked or upset but calculating, already planning how to manage this new complication. Michael burned everything to multiple drives, then uploaded copies to 3 separate secure cloud servers. If Wallace tried to destroy evidence, he'd find it had already metastasized beyond his control. The 4th monitor showed Wallace's personal computer activity. Michael had installed keylogging software 6 months ago after noticing unusual financial patterns. Now those logs revealed Wallace's private searches. How are marital assets divided if spouse dies during pregnancy? Prenatal injury grounds for abortion. Life insurance pay out pregnancy complications. Can prenatal trauma cause miscarriage? Legal consequences if pregnancy ends due to assault. Each search was dated, time-stamped, tied directly to Wallace's personal laptop. Evidence of intent, evidence of planning, evidence that Wallace hadn't just enabled the attack, he'd been researching its potential outcomes. Michael copied everything, his expression cold. The 5th monitor showed corporate governance records, board meeting minutes, shareholder agreements, bylaws that outlined exactly what could trigger Wallace's removal as CEO. Embezzlement was on the list, illegal use of company resources, actions that brought reputational harm to Jordan Enterprises. Michael had already drafted the anonymous report to the board. It detailed every financial irregularity, every misappropriated fund, every policy violation. He'd even included screenshots of Wallace using company email servers to coordinate an assault. At 3:15 a.m., Michael hit send. The email went to all 12 board members simultaneously. Subject line: urgent. Financial irregularities and criminal activity requiring immediate board action. No signature, no identifying information, just evidence meticulously organized, impossible to ignore. Michael's phone buzzed 30 seconds later. A board member he'd worked with on security protocols. Unknown, is this real? Michael typed back from a burner phone, every document is verified, every transaction is traceable, every message is authenticated. Check your own records if you doubt it. Unknown, emergency meeting tomorrow 8 a.m. Jordan will be required to attend. Unknown, who are you? Michael didn't respond. He destroyed the burner phone and moved to the 6th monitor. This one showed real-time security feeds from Wallace's penthouse apartment. Wallace was awake, packing, phone pressed to his ear. Michael couldn't hear the conversation, but he could read body language. Wallace was agitated, angry, probably calling his lawyer, his accountant, anyone who might help him understand how his carefully hidden crimes had suddenly been exposed. Michael's own phone rang, Wallace's number. He answered, Nava. Where are you? Wallace's voice was sharp, controlled, but Michael detected the edge of panic beneath it. Security office, same as every night. Michael kept his tone professional. Is there a problem, sir? I need you to access the backup servers. Someone's been pulling private records, financial documents, emails, surveillance footage. I need to know who, and I need those files deleted immediately. Deleted? Michael frowned as if confused. Mr. Jordan, those servers are protected specifically to prevent deletion. Legal liability, regulatory compliance. We can't just erase corporate records. I'm the CEO, Wallace snapped. I'm ordering you to delete them. I'd need written authorization from the board, Michael said calmly. Security protocols require. Fuck the protocols. Wallace's composure cracked. Those files contain private information that someone is using to sabotage me. If you won't delete them, then I'll find someone who will. You're fired, effective immediately. Michael had been waiting for this. You can't fire me, sir. I'm the CEO of this company. And I'm contracted through Sentinel Security Solutions, not directly employed by Jordan Enterprises. Michael's voice remained perfectly professional. My contract specifies that termination requires board approval. It's in the agreement you signed 3 years ago. Section 7, paragraph 4. Silence on the other end. Then, you did this. You're the one who sent those files to the board. I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Jordan. Don't play stupid with me. Wallace's voice dropped dangerously low. I don't know who you think you are, but you've made a serious mistake. I have resources you can't imagine. People who can make your life very difficult. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to delete those files. You're going to tell the board there was a system error, and you're going to disappear before. Before what? Michael interrupted quietly. Before you have me attacked in a parking garage. Before you give someone my schedule and tell them about security blind spots. He paused. How did that work out with Rachel? The silence stretched so long Michael wondered if Wallace had hung up. Then, who are you? I'm your head of security, Michael said simply. The man you trusted to protect your empire. The man you didn't bother learning anything about before you gave him complete access to every secret you have. He leaned back in his chair. You made a lot of mistakes, Wallace, but the biggest one was assuming everyone in your world was as corrupt as you are. I'll destroy you, Wallace whispered. I'll bury you, You'll be at the board meeting tomorrow morning at 8, Michael interrupted. That's not a request. That's an order from the board delivered 30 seconds ago to your email. He checked his monitor. Yes, there it is. Read it, Wallace. Read it and understand that your empire is collapsing around you, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. He ended the call. Michael sat in the quiet hum of the security office, surrounded by evidence of Wallace Jordan's crimes, and waited. He'd set everything in motion. The board had the evidence. The FBI had been anonymously tipped about the embezzlement. The local police had been sent the assault footage with detailed documentation. Now came the hardest part of any operation, waiting for the dominoes to fall. His phone buzzed again. Rachel. Rachel can't sleep. Is it really happening? Michael, yes. Board meeting in 5 hours. Police have everything. It's over. Rachel, what if he runs? Michael, his passport is flagged. His bank accounts are being monitored. He can't move money without triggering alerts. And he still thinks he can talk his way out of this. Rachel, thank you for everything. Michael stared at those words, thinking about the 2-year-old niece he'd never met because he'd been deployed. Thinking about coming home to find his sister married to a man he didn't trust. Thinking about taking this security job specifically so he could watch over her from inside Wallace's world. Michael, that's what family does. Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. He set his phone down and turned back to the monitors. On screen 6, Wallace was still packing, still making calls, desperate, afraid, finally understanding that the walls were closing in. Michael checked the time, 4:23 a.m. At 7:45 a.m., 3 police cruisers pulled up outside Jordan Enterprises headquarters. Michael watched them on camera as they entered the lobby, showed credentials to security, and headed for the elevators. At 7:52 a.m., Michael's phone buzzed with a message from the board secretary. Mr. Jordan has been advised that law enforcement wishes to speak with him. Meeting delayed pending resolution. At 8:03 a.m., Michael watched on the security feed as Detective Sarah Martinez and 2 uniformed officers stepped out of the elevator onto the executive floor. At 8:07 a.m., they knocked on Wallace Jordan's office door. At 8:09 a.m., Wallace Jordan was informed he was being arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit assault, embezzlement, fraud, and misuse of corporate resources for criminal purposes. At 8:11 a.m., Wallace Jordan was escorted out of his own building in handcuffs, past employees who stopped and stared, past the board members who watched from the conference room with grim satisfaction. Michael watched it all unfold on camera, his expression unchanging. The trap had closed, and Wallace Jordan, billionaire CEO, master manipulator, man who thought himself untouchable, was caught inside. The boardroom of Jordan Enterprises occupied the entire 52nd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city Wallace Jordan believed he owned. 12 leather chairs surrounded a table made of Italian marble. Abstract art worth more than most people's homes decorated the walls. Everything in this room had been chosen to communicate power, permanence, untouchability. Today, it would witness the destruction of the man who'd built it. Wallace Jordan arrived at 8:47 a.m., 47 minutes late to his own emergency board meeting. He'd spent the morning with his lawyer, a shark in a $1,000 suit named Marcus Hale, crafting explanations, preparing defenses, assembling the narrative that would save his empire. He walked into the boardroom like he owned it, because he did, or he had. The distinction was about to become brutally clear. "Gentlemen, ladies," Wallace nodded to the 12 board members seated around the table. "I apologize for the delay. I understand there are some concerns about financial irregularities that need to be addressed." Catherine Reynolds, the board chair and a woman who'd made her fortune in private equity, didn't smile. "Sit down, Wallace." The tone made Wallace pause. Not "Mr. Jordan," not "Wallace, thank you for coming." Just a flat command that suggested his authority in this room was already compromised. He sat. Marcus Hale sat beside him, already pulling documents from his briefcase. "I've reviewed the anonymous allegations sent to the board," Wallace began, his voice calm and reasonable. "While I appreciate the concern, I believe this is a case of accounting confusion. Some expenditures may look irregular to someone unfamiliar with complex corporate finance, but I assure you—" "Stop talking," Catherine interrupted. Wallace's jaw tightened. "Excuse me. We've had forensic accountants reviewing your financials since 3 a.m., Catherine said, sliding a folder across the table. "We've had attorneys examining your email correspondence. We've had our own security team, not your contracted team, Wallace, an independent team, reviewing surveillance footage and access logs." She leaned forward, her expression carved from granite. "This isn't accounting confusion. This is systematic fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit violent felony. So stop talking and start listening." The room went silent. Wallace felt something cold settle in his stomach, but he kept his expression neutral. "I don't know what you think you found, but—" $4.7 million, Catherine interrupted again. "Siphoned from Jordan Enterprises over 2 years through 3 shell companies. Meridian Consulting, which has no employees, no office, and has never provided any actual consulting services. Apex Solutions, which exists only as a bank account receiving transfers from this company. Summit Strategic Partners, registered to a PO box in Delaware and used exclusively to pay for your mistress's lifestyle." She pulled out a document, turned it toward Wallace. "Bank statements, transaction histories, every stolen dollar traced, documented, undeniable. Would you like to explain why Jordan Enterprises has been funding a luxury apartment, a Mercedes, and a platinum credit card for Dana Brown?" Marcus Hale leaned forward. "My client declines to answer that question at this time. These allegations are—" "Not allegations." Catherine pulled out another folder. "Evidence. We have the bank transfers. We have the shell company registration documents with your signature, Wallace. We have emails where you explicitly authorized payments to these companies for services that were never rendered." She paused. "We also have your personal emails discussing how to hide these payments from the CFO." Wallace's hands clenched under the table. "Those emails are private correspondence. You have no right." We have every right, board member James Chen said, speaking for the first time. Corporate Bylaws, Section 12. In cases of suspected fraud or criminal activity, the board has authorization to access all company communications and records. You signed those bylaws yourself, Wallace. You just never thought they'd be used against you. Another board member, Patricia Holmes, pulled up a screen on the wall behind Catherine. Let's talk about what else we found. The screen lit up, text messages between Wallace and Dana Brown. Patricia read aloud, her voice cold and precise. Wallace Jordan, November 14th. Rachel has an appointment on Thursday at 2:30. St. Catherine's Medical Building, Level 3 parking. Dana Brown. Why are you telling me this? Wallace Jordan. Just information, in case you wanted to clarify things with her. She scrolled down. November 15th. Wallace Jordan. The parking garage cameras have a 15-second refresh delay on Level 3. Blind spots near the third pillar from the elevator. Just information, Dana. What you do with it is your choice. The room felt like it was closing in. Wallace's breathing became shallow. That's taken out of context. I was warning Dana to stay away from Rachel, not providing intelligence for an assault. Patricia's smile was razor-sharp. Then please explain this. The screen changed. Security footage, crystal clear. Timestamp November 17th, 2:47 p.m. The boardroom watched in silence as Dana Brown stepped out from behind a concrete pillar in the parking garage. Watched her approach Rachel Jordan, who was clearly pregnant, who was holding ultrasound photos, who looked terrified. Watched Dana strike Rachel twice, once in the shoulder, once directly in her swollen stomach. Watched Rachel fall to the concrete, bleeding, shaking. Watched Dana walk away calmly, without panic, without remorse. That's your wife, Wallace, Catherine said quietly. 7 months pregnant with your child, being attacked by your mistress in a parking garage where you assured Dana there were camera blind spots. Wallace's face had gone white. I never told Dana to do that. I never authorized. You provided the intelligence, James Chen said. The location, the timing, the security vulnerabilities. In military terms, that's called mission planning. In legal terms, it's called conspiracy. Marcus Hale was frantically writing notes, his confident demeanor cracking. My client was not present during the assault. He had no direct involvement. He had every involvement. Patricia pulled up more messages. After the assault, Wallace received a text from Dana. It's done. She won't be a problem anymore. Wallace's response. Good. Delete this conversation and don't contact me for a while. She turned to Wallace, her expression disgusted. You didn't call the police. You didn't check on your wife. You didn't do anything except try to cover your tracks. I didn't know what Dana meant, Wallace insisted. I thought she meant she'd talk to Rachel, not. Stop lying. Catherine's voice cut through the room like a blade. We have your search history, Wallace, your personal laptop. Searches dated from 3 weeks before the assault. The screen changed again. A list of Google searches. How are marital assets divided if spouse dies during pregnancy? Can prenatal trauma cause miscarriage? Legal consequences if pregnancy ends due to assault. Life insurance payout pregnancy complications. The room was silent. 12 board members stared at Wallace Jordan, and in their eyes, he saw his future disintegrating. You were researching outcomes, Catherine said softly, planning scenarios, calculating whether it was cheaper to arrange an accident than to divorce your pregnant wife. She closed her folder. We have everything, Wallace. The embezzlement, the conspiracy, the evidence that you used company resources and company security systems to facilitate violence against your own wife. This is a witch hunt, Wallace said, his voice rising. Someone is framing me, someone with access to my accounts, my emails. His eyes narrowed. My security chief, Michael Nash. He's the only one with this level of access. He's fabricating evidence, manipulating records. Michael Nava, Catherine corrected. Wallace went still. What? His real name is Michael Nava, Rachel Jordan's brother, the man who's been running your security operation for 3 years specifically so he could protect his sister from you. Catherine smiled coldly. He didn't fabricate anything, Wallace. He just documented what you did. Every crime, every betrayal, every violent plan. You handed him the evidence yourself. Wallace felt the room spinning. Rachel's brother. The quiet security contractor he'd barely noticed, who he'd never bothered to vet properly, who he'd given complete access to every secret. Rachel's brother. That's illegal, Marcus Hale said desperately. Conflict of interest, breach of contract. His contract was with Sentinel Security Solutions, not with Wallace personally, James Chen said. And there's no law against taking a job to watch over your sister, especially when the man she married turns out to be a criminal. Catherine stood. Wallace Jordan, by unanimous board vote taken at 6:47 this morning, you are hereby removed as CEO of Jordan Enterprises, effective immediately. Your employment is terminated. Your stock options are void. Your access to all company systems, buildings, and resources is revoked. You can't. We have, it's done. Catherine nodded toward the door. It opened. Detective Sarah Martinez entered, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. She held a folder and a very official-looking expression. Wallace Jordan, she said. Wallace stood slowly, his world collapsing in slow motion. Yes. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault, embezzlement, fraud, wire fraud, and misuse of corporate resources to facilitate criminal activity. She pulled out handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. This is a mistake, Wallace said, his voice breaking. I'm a CEO, I'm a respected businessman, I have rights. You have the right to remain silent, Detective Martinez repeated, pulling Wallace's hands behind his back. The handcuffs clicked shut with terrible finality. I suggest you use it. Marcus Hale was on his feet. My client will not be answering any questions without counsel present. Understood. Detective Martinez nodded to the officers. Take him out through the main lobby. Let everyone see. Wait, Wallace's composure shattered completely. Not the lobby, please. The service elevator, the parking garage, anything but. You wanted everyone to see how powerful you were, Catherine said softly. Now everyone gets to see what you really are. The officers led Wallace toward the door. He twisted back, looking at the board members who'd once respected him, feared him, followed his vision. They watched him go with expressions ranging from disgust to grim satisfaction. The elevator doors opened. Wallace was led inside, hands cuffed behind his back, his $1,000 suit wrinkled, his carefully constructed image destroyed. As the elevator descended, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the polished steel doors. Not a powerful CEO, not an untouchable billionaire. Just a man in handcuffs, paying the price for believing he was above consequences. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. 50 employees stopped and stared. Phones came out, recording. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Wallace Jordan, their CEO, their leader, the man who'd built this empire, being perp-walked through his own building by police. Outside, news cameras were already waiting. Someone had tipped them off. The footage would be on every channel by noon. Wallace was loaded into a police car, his head pressed down by a firm hand, his body folded into the back seat like he was nothing special. Just another criminal being transported to jail. Through the window, he saw Michael Nava standing by the building entrance, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Their eyes met for just a moment. Michael didn't smile, didn't gloat, just watched with the cold assessment of a soldier who'd completed his mission. Then the police car pulled away, sirens silent but lights flashing, carrying Wallace Jordan away from the empire he'd built and the power he'd abused. Behind him, in a luxury apartment across the city, Dana Brown watched the news coverage with shaking hands. Her phone rang, her lawyer. "They're coming for you next," he said without preamble. "The DA has the assault footage, the messages with Wallace, everything. I need you to come to my office immediately. Dana, are you listening?" But Dana wasn't listening. She was watching Wallace being led into the police station, watching her future, the marriage, the money, the life she'd believed she was fighting for, disappear like smoke. She destroyed a pregnant woman for this man. And he'd already forgotten she existed. The phone slipped from her hand. In the silence of her expensive apartment, paid for with embezzled funds, bought with a conspiracy that had just collapsed, Dana Brown finally understood. She'd been a weapon. And weapons were always discarded after use. 3 months later, on a Tuesday morning in early February, Rachel Nava woke up at 4:23 a.m. with contractions that felt like her entire body was being squeezed by an invisible fist. She didn't panic. She'd been preparing for this moment, reading books, taking classes, building strength both physical and emotional. She reached for her phone, timing the contractions with steady hands. 7 minutes apart, then 6, then 5. She called Michael. He answered on the first ring. "It's time." "It's time," Rachel confirmed, her voice calm despite the pain radiating through her abdomen. "Can you?" "I'm already on my way, 10 minutes. Rachel smiled. Of course he was already on his way. Michael had probably been sleeping in his clothes for the past week, keys in his pocket, hospital bag packed and waiting by the door. She dressed slowly, carefully, one hand on her belly. "We're going to meet you soon," she whispered to her daughter. "You and me, we're going to be okay." Another contraction hit, stronger this time. Rachel breathed through it the way she'd practiced, in through the nose, out through the mouth, focusing on the fact that every contraction brought her closer to holding her baby girl. The woman she'd been 7 months ago would have called Wallace, would have waited for him to arrive, to hold her hand, to tell her everything would be fine. But that woman had died in a parking garage. The woman standing in this apartment, the small, modest 2-bedroom she'd moved into after leaving Wallace's penthouse, was someone different, someone stronger, someone who'd learned that the only person she could truly depend on was herself. And her brother, who appeared at her door exactly 9 minutes after she'd called, looking alert and focused and slightly terrified. "You okay?" he asked, taking her overnight bag. "I'm about to push a human out of my body," Rachel said dryly. "I've been better." Michael almost smiled. "Let's get you to the hospital." The labor lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of pain that made the parking garage attack feel like a gentle shove. 14 hours of breathing, pushing, screaming, crying, and wondering if her body would survive this. Michael stayed the entire time, holding her hand when she needed support, stepping back when she needed space, advocating for her with nurses when she was too exhausted to speak for herself. "You're doing great," he kept saying. "Just a little longer, you've got this." At 6:47 p.m., with one final push that felt like it might split her in half, Rachel's daughter entered the world. The sound of that first cry, piercing, angry, absolutely perfect, made Rachel sob with relief and joy, an overwhelming love she hadn't known she was capable of feeling. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, smiling as she placed the tiny, screaming bundle on Rachel's chest. "Healthy and strong. Good lungs on this one." Rachel looked down at her daughter, red-faced, wrinkled, covered in vernix and blood, and absolutely beautiful. She had dark hair plastered to her head, tiny fists waving in outrage at being removed from her warm cocoon, eyes squeezed shut against the harsh hospital lights. "Hi," Rachel whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, baby girl, I'm your mama. I've been waiting so long to meet you." The baby's crying quieted slightly at the sound of Rachel's voice, as if recognizing something familiar in this strange new world. Michael stood beside the bed, his expression softer than Rachel had ever seen it. "She's perfect." "She is," Rachel agreed, running one finger gently over her daughter's tiny hand. The baby's fingers curled reflexively around Rachel's, gripping with surprising strength. "You're perfect, you're safe, you're loved, and nobody is ever going to hurt you." They named her Elena Grace Nava. Elena because Rachel had always loved the name. Grace because that's what Rachel had needed to survive these past months. Grace for herself, grace for her mistakes, grace for the woman she'd been and the woman she was becoming. The hospital room was quiet now, the chaos of delivery replaced by the gentle beeping of monitors and Elena's soft breathing from the bassinet beside Rachel's bed. It was late, past midnight, but Rachel couldn't sleep. She kept watching her daughter, making sure she was real, that this wasn't a dream she'd wake from. Michael sat in the chair by the window, scrolling through his phone. He'd barely left her side since they'd arrived at the hospital 14 hours ago. "You should go home," Rachel said softly. "Get some rest, we'll be fine." "I know you'll be fine," Michael said, not looking up from his phone. "Doesn't mean I'm leaving." Rachel smiled. "What are you reading?" Michael hesitated, then turned his phone toward her. A news article. The headline read, "Former CEO Wallace Jordan faces 20 years in federal prison. Trial date set for March." Rachel's breath caught. She'd been avoiding the news, avoiding anything that might pull her back into that darkness. But now, holding her newborn daughter, she felt strong enough to look. 20 years, she whispered. "The embezzlement charges are federal," Michael explained quietly. "Wire fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy. The state charges for the assault are separate. Those could add another 10 years. He paused. "His lawyers are trying to negotiate a plea deal. The DA isn't interested." Rachel thought about Wallace in a courtroom, wearing prison orange instead of his tailored suits. Thought about him in a cell, stripped of power, money, control. Part of her, the part that had loved him once, felt a flicker of pity. But then she looked at Elena, sleeping peacefully, and the pity evaporated. "He tried to have us killed," Rachel said quietly. "Me and her. He researched pregnancy complications, gave his mistress my schedule, hoped something would happen that would solve his problem." She met Michael's eyes. 20 years isn't enough, but it's justice." "It is," Michael agreed. He pulled up another article. "This one's about Dana." Rachel read in silence. Dana Brown had been arrested 3 days after Wallace, charged with assault on a pregnant woman, conspiracy, and attempted harm to an unborn child. She'd pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence, 5 years with possibility of parole in 3. The article included a photo. Dana in a courtroom, her blonde hair pulled back severely, her face bare of makeup, looking 10 years older than the polished woman Rachel had confronted in the restaurant. According to the article, Dana had given birth to a boy 2 weeks ago, Wallace's son. The baby was being raised by Dana's sister while Dana served her sentence. "2 children," Rachel murmured. "2 Bobbies who will grow up knowing their father is a criminal and their mothers made terrible choices." She looked at Elena. "At least one of them has a mother who learned to fight back." Michael set his phone aside. "You did more than fight back, Rachel. You survived. You protected your daughter. You rebuilt your life." He leaned forward. "That takes more strength than most people have." "I had help," Rachel said, meeting his eyes. "I had you." "You've always had me. You always will." Rachel felt tears burning again, not tears of pain or fear, but gratitude. "Thank you for everything, for protecting us, for believing me when Wallace wouldn't, for bringing him down when I couldn't." Her voice broke. "For being the family I needed when my husband failed me." Michael stood, crossing to the bed. He looked down at Elena, his expression unguarded. "She's going to grow up knowing she's protected. She's going to grow up strong like her mother. and she's going to grow up knowing that family means showing up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. He met Rachel's eyes. That's what you taught me, Rachel. When Mom was sick, when Dad left, when everything fell apart, you showed up. You kept us together. You were 16 years old and you became the parent we needed. He paused. I've been paying that back ever since. You don't owe me anything, Rachel whispered. I owe you everything, Michael corrected gently. But more than that, I love you. You're my sister. Your daughter is my niece. And I'm going to make sure you both have the life you deserve. He squeezed her hand once, then stepped back toward the window, giving her space. Rachel lay in the quiet hospital room, listening to her daughter breathe, thinking about the journey that had brought her here, the marriage that had crumbled, the attack that had shattered her illusions, the brother who had saved her, the strength she'd found in herself when everything else had fallen away. 7 months ago, she'd been a woman who endured, who accepted, who believed love meant sacrifice and silence. Now she was a woman who demanded better, who fought back, who understood that real love meant safety, respect, partnership, not suffering. Alina stirred, making soft noises that suggested she'd be awake and hungry soon. Rachel carefully lifted her from the bassinet, cradling her daughter against her chest. Hi, sweet girl, Rachel whispered. You're awake. Alina's eyes opened, dark, unfocused, but searching, finding Rachel's face and fixing on it with the intensity only newborns possess. I want to tell you something, Rachel said softly, her voice for Alina alone. About the world you were born into, about your father, about what happened, about why some things are the way they are. Alina blinked slowly, as if listening. Your father is a man who forgot what mattered, Rachel continued. He forgot that love is a verb, not a feeling. He forgot that power without integrity is just cruelty. He forgot that money can't buy character and status can't replace humanity. She adjusted Alina in her arms, making sure she was comfortable. You were never unwanted, my love. You were just born into a battle you didn't ask for, but we won. Not through violence or revenge, but through truth, through evidence, through refusing to accept that powerful men get to hurt people without consequences. Alina's tiny hand found Rachel's finger again, gripping tight. You're going to grow up knowing your worth isn't determined by your father's crimes or your mother's survival, Rachel whispered. You're going to grow up knowing that family isn't just blood, it's the people who show up when you need them. Like Uncle Michael, who protected us when no one else would. She kissed Alina's forehead, breathing in that perfect newborn smell, milk and innocence and infinite possibility. You're going to grow up strong. You're going to grow up safe. And you're going to grow up knowing that your mother loved you so much, she learned to love herself first. Because that's what you deserved, a mother who knew her own worth, who demanded better, who refused to settle for less than she and her daughter deserved. Rachel looked up at Michael, who was watching from the window with suspiciously bright eyes. We won, she said to him, her voice stronger now. He tried to erase us. Instead, we erased him. Michael nodded. You did that. You made the choice to fight back. I just provided the weapons. No, Rachel said firmly. You provided the proof, but I provided the courage. We did this together. 3 days later, Rachel walked out of the hospital carrying Alina in a carrier, Michael beside her with the bags. The February air was cold but clean, the sun bright against a cloudless sky. A photographer from a local news station was waiting, someone who'd been following the Wallace Jordan case. Rachel had agreed to one photo, one statement, then privacy. She stood on the hospital steps, her daughter bundled safely against her chest, and looked into the camera. My name is Rachel Nava, she said clearly. 3 months ago, I was attacked by my husband's mistress in a parking garage. My husband provided her with the intelligence to carry out that attack. He hoped something would happen to me and my daughter that would save him from a messy divorce. She paused, letting that sink in. But I survived. My daughter survived. And with my brother's help, we exposed every crime, every betrayal, every calculated cruelty. Wallace Jordan is facing decades in prison. Dana Brown is serving time for assault. And I'm standing here free, holding my healthy baby girl. Rachel looked directly into the camera. If you're in a relationship where you feel afraid, controlled, or trapped, if someone makes you feel like you're nothing without them, please hear me. You are not nothing. You are everything, and you deserve better. There are people who will help you. There are brothers like mine who will stand beside you. There is a way out, even when it feels impossible. She shifted Alina slightly, making sure she was comfortable. My daughter was born into a battle, Rachel said softly. But she was never unwanted. She was never a mistake. She was the reason I found the strength to demand better, to fight back, to survive. Rachel met the camera lens one last time. We won, she said simply. And if you're fighting the same battle, you can win too. She turned and walked toward Michael's car, her head high, her daughter safe, her future stretching out before her like an open road. 6 months later, Rachel stood in the doorway of her new house, not an apartment, but a real house with a yard and a room for Alina and space for the life she was building. Michael had helped with the down payment, refusing to let her argue. Alina was crawling now, exploring every corner with fearless curiosity. She pulled herself up on furniture, babbled constantly, and lit up every time Uncle Michael visited. The divorce had been finalized last month. Rachel got everything. The prenuptial agreement Wallace had insisted on was void due to his criminal fraud. The house, the assets, the financial security to raise Alina without fear. Wallace was still awaiting trial, his lawyers filing motion after motion, but the outcome was inevitable. The evidence was overwhelming. His empire had collapsed. His reputation was destroyed. His name had become synonymous with corporate greed and domestic violence. Dana had been denied parole. Her son was being raised by family members who'd promised to tell him the truth when he was old enough to understand. Rachel stood at the window, watching Alina play, and thought about the woman she'd been when this all started. That woman would have stayed, would have endured, would have convinced herself that suffering was the same as strength. But the woman standing here now understood something essential. Real strength wasn't endurance. It was knowing when to walk away, when to demand better, when to fight back. Her phone buzzed, a text from Michael coming by for dinner, bringing dessert. Rachel smiled. Family. Not the one she'd married into, but the one that had always been there, protecting her, believing in her, helping her rise. She walked over to Alina, scooping her daughter into her arms. Alina giggled, her dark eyes bright with joy and security and innocence that Rachel would protect with everything she had. You know what I realized? Rachel whispered to her daughter. You saved me just as much as I saved you. You gave me a reason to demand better, to fight back, to survive. She carried Alina to the window, looking out at the neighborhood, safe, quiet, far from the penthouse where she'd lived in luxury and fear. We're going to be okay, Rachel said softly. More than okay. We're going to be happy. We're going to build a life where love means safety, where family means showing up, where strength means knowing your worth. Alina reached for Rachel's face, her tiny hand gentle against her mother's cheek. Rachel thought about Wallace in his jail cell, Dana in hers. Two people who'd chosen power over integrity, cruelty over compassion, convenience over character. They'd lost everything trying to destroy her. And she'd gained everything by refusing to be destroyed. You were never unwanted, Rachel whispered to Alina, the same words she'd spoken in the hospital room, the same truth she'd carry forward into every day of their future together. You were just born into a battle, and we won. If this story moved you, if Rachel's journey inspired you, if you want more stories about survivors who become warriors, about justice that feels earned, about women who rise from the ashes stronger than before, subscribe now. More stories are coming. More battles. More victories. More proof that the right person with the right reason to fight can bring down empires built on lies. Subscribe and watch out for the next story. Because every woman who's been underestimated, betrayed, or told she's nothing without someone else deserves to see herself win. And in our stories, she always does.